While Iran threatens to intervene in Israel's war with Hamas and shifts its proxy forces closer to Israel's northern border, Israel keeps striking the Gaza Strip, likely in preparation of a ground invasion, and we have once again a dubious scene of a supposed Israeli strike that leaves more questions than answers. This and more in this situation report about Israel's war against Hamas. The infiltrations into Israel's territory seem to have stopped by now. We have here the Qassam brigades that were reporting that they were infiltrating into Israel on the 14th, so 2 days ago. But by now, the troop concentration by Israel around the Gaza Strip seems to have likely stopped any further attempts. There's also a video recently published about Israel naval forces attacking a boat that with Hamas terrorists that try to infiltrate by sea, and then attacking the swimmers and divers with special munitions. But overall, the attempts seem to have stopped now and are mostly ineffectual. The attacks with missiles and rockets have continued up to Tel Aviv. Strikes have happened from the Gaza Strip. The frequency of the attacks is getting reduced daily, though. The amount of missiles of rockets being fired is being reduced, likely because of the Israeli airstrikes. I read some analysis that thought that it might be Hamas keeping its stockpile to, as they understood this is going to be a long war and they want to be able to keep striking Israel. But this seems kind of unreasonable, as the strikes hit a lot of pre-identified positions, and among those surely also weapon depots. It seems more likely that right now they simply can't afford to set up a missile pod ready to strike without getting hit from the air, which, as the air above the airspace above the Gaza Strip is filled with reconnaissance drones, helicopters, and fighter jets. A helicopter from the Israeli armed forces was destroyed by Hamas. It had a mechanical damage, at least that was the credible news I found about it. It had a mechanical damage, had to land fairly close to the Gaza Strip, and was later destroyed with an ATGM by Hamas. At least according to the credible news, the reports that I found, nobody was injured and nobody was killed in that attack, but still Hamas has effectively destroyed its first Israeli aircraft in this war. Hamas is also claiming that by now 2,700 people have died inside of the Gaza Strip. This number has to be understood and has to be understood in context and be taken with some grain of salt. First of all, it's not officially Hamas claiming, it's the health ministry, but that is run by Hamas. And secondly, they have a vested interest in inflating the death numbers, either with human shields or by simply claiming that more people died, because the higher the death toll, the higher the pressure will be on the Israeli side, whether the amount of people have died or not. Also, for instance, we have a video recently from an attack on a refugee truck filled with refugees that I mentioned in my last situation report. In this context, Hamas claimed 70 people have died, but the video only showed 12 corpses. So while there is always some possibility of some corpses already having been removed, even though the context didn't really allow for that, we need to acknowledge that the death toll might be massively inflated. Still, of course, there's a lot of people dying there, and a fair amount of those will be innocents. Please don't misunderstand the fact that the context that I try to put numbers into the context and not simply take over Hamas propaganda as a pure fact. The Israeli side has now reopened the water valves and is providing Gaza Strip with water again. According to the Israelis themselves, Israel only provided 8% of the water anyways. 92% was out of wells inside of the Gaza Strip. So at least according to this, you would expect that nobody would have to die of dehydration if 92% was locally sourced anyways. But regardless, Israel has opened the valves again and is providing the Gaza Strip with water again. A CNN reporter has reported that he watched 5 trucks crossing through the Rafa border crossing into the Gaza Strip. So this is the indication that the first aid is arriving from Egypt into the Gaza Strip. Also, foreign citizens are supposed to be evacuated. This was actually supposed to happen fairly soon, but there was a strike on Rafah, which we are going to watch here. The thing is, though, this was supposed to, according to Hezbollah and Hezbollah close media, this was Israelis doing an airstrike. The issue I have, though, is that we see that in the end, one piece of this concrete is kind of moving a little. The earth that is moved is a fair amount, though, and we can even identify the object. It is here. Unfortunately, the picture isn't clear enough to show us, and there is no other frame showing the object, but we see it's coming vertically down, more or less vertically down. Hamas claimed it was an Israeli rocket. I don't think this is a rocket. To me, it looked like a mortar, even though the amount of earth moved makes it kind of questionable. I have no idea. It could be an Israeli strike as well. It could theoretically be a bomb. I'm 80% sure it was a mortar, but I have taken up contact with several explosive experts to in the future be able to simply send it to them, because I'm pretty sure a military explosives expert will be able to say that this is at best 120 millimeter mortar, or this has to be at least a 500-pound bomb. So from what I see, and I've watched obviously a couple of thousands explosions, this doesn't look like a bomb to me. The explosion doesn't look big enough, but as said, there is a certain amount of uncertainty from my side, and I don't want to start with propaganda myself. If it wasn't an Israeli bomb, and it could be kind of hard to say why the Israelis would strike the border post. It would be Hamas, and Hamas has a vested interest in it, as it wants to keep up and keep working on the image that Israel is the villain in this war, and of course, should supposed Israeli strikes kill Egypt soldiers, should Egypt even get to the point that they get involved into all of this, it would be a massive win for Hamas. So striking the border post seems to be more likely to be in favor of Hamas, and we need to see that while Israel has started a blockade and not letting food in, there's still, according to international reports, there was still enough food for at least a week. Some reports were saying 2 weeks. So as of now, nobody is starving yet. So keeping the border post closed for another 1 or 2 days is probably not going to increase the suffering massively. So you could argue that it's possibly Hamas attack on the border post. As said, the explosion seems a little big for my taste. A little too big for a mortar, but far too small for a bomb. This looks to me like a mortar, but if you look exactly at the fins, it could theoretically be a JDAM as well. But JDAMs usually have like a stubble on the top here, and I can't identify that either. So it's a little difficult to me. I would tend towards a mortar round, but I cannot with 100% certainty say it in this regard. As said, if I have more information about this in the next video, because I will try to get real experts on this that can, according to the size of the explosion, give me more information, then I will talk to you about that in the near future if I have more information about this, as I try to stick as closely to the truth as possible here. We also have a video of equipment that was captured. This is supposedly only 20% of what the Hamas terrorists brought. We see the big amount of hand grenades. This is propellant for RPG-7s, and we have the warheads themselves. We see it on the other videos. This is regular RPG-7 warheads, and we can even see tandem warheads on the side, far more dangerous against tanks with explosive reactive armor. Some rifles, obviously, and some more modern anti-tank systems. And the last part is fairly interesting too. Those are mines, directional mines, that are meant to create like a big wave of shrapnel in one certain direction. This should be an explosively formed penetrator that is meant to strike through armored targets. And we even have, anti-tank mines here. So at least according to this, they actually plan to hold their territory for a fair amount, the territory the Hamas terrorists captured, and supposedly they tried to fortify it. They brought mines with them, at least if we want to believe the Israelis in this regard, that all of this was brought over. From the West Bank, we have some news about additional fighting. The amount of combat engagements is dying down massively, so it's now in the 1 digits from what I've seen. So both sides engaging with each other is now in the 1 digits. The reason for that seems to be that the Israelis have started a wave of arrests, probably trying to take out as many or arrest as many people that are likely going to start fighting in the near future. That might be a reason for that. The other might be that the majority of those that intend to start fighting wait until the ground offensive into Gaza has started, but we will have to see at least how it develops. Still, though, for the last 3 days, the number of engagements is going down. From the Lebanon, we have some informations. The Israelis are evacuating 28 villages close to the Lebanese border because of the shelling from Hezbollah. In Lebanon itself, the Christian town of Ramaish, the inhabitants created a vigil to prevent Hezbollah from firing rockets from their town. This shows us not necessarily that they love the Israelis and don't want any harm to them, but it shows us A, that the support for Hezbollah is far from certain there, and B, that Hezbollah tried to fire from the town to use human shields as well. And this is no news anyways, because it was shown in the past too that Hezbollah, the same as Hamas, is using civilian installations both for storage of weaponry as well as for firing it. And in this regard, obviously the citizens didn't want their town to get destroyed, so they prevented Hezbollah from firing rockets from their town itself. Hezbollah is still attacking, though. They keep attacking Israel with rockets and ATGMs. There are now and then videos popping up of Hezbollah striking Israeli armored fighting vehicles. A few days ago, they destroyed an M113, supposedly abandoned, even though, to be honest, that doesn't make fully sense to me why it would be close on the border but abandoned. Now there's a video of them striking a tank. That's at least the description. I wasn't able to identify it. It didn't look like a Merkava to me, more like an engineering vehicle. But regardless, they struck it with ATGMs and have at least hit it. I cannot confirm that it was destroyed, but the fighting is continuing there. Israel is obviously striking back with artillery and with airstrikes from drones as well as from planes. Both sides, though, seem to still be interested in not fully engaging in all-out fighting. Hezbollah is either waiting for Israel to fully attack into the Gaza Strip, or they are still mobilizing. Whatever it is, it's as of now, both sides still show some restraint, even though it might sound inappropriate to talk about restraint when we're talking about a terrorist organization attacking a state. Still, though, Hezbollah doesn't do close to what they are capable of doing. This much, at least, is the simple truth. Still, though, Asaib al-Haq has arrived in Lebanon. This is a Shia terrorist organization. As far as I know, it made a name of itself by attacking US troops in Iraq. They have now said that they have arrived in Lebanon and are ready to join the fighting against Israel. Also, couple of prominent PMF figures, so Popular Mobilization Forces. Those are the Shia militias, usually considered to be very close to Iran, that were created in Iraq due to the fighting against the Islamic State. Several of their prominent social media figures have now shown to have arrived in Lebanon and claim they are ready to start fighting against Israel. In Syria, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, is also sending troops closer to the border, missile experts as well as engineer experts, according to the reports. And we have a journalist from the, no, this isn't it. Here we have a journalist from Iran saying that Major General Sardar Ismail Khani from the Al-Quds forces is coordinating all the setup there, all the forces arriving. He's the regular Al-Quds commander in Syria. And as we've talked, we are talking about several Iranian proxy groups, militias, terrorist groups that are being sent and redeployed towards the Israeli border, probably as a show of force and ready to be fighting itself. Also, because I forgot it before, we have some more news about Gaza. Now, the pro-Russian military blogger Riba was claiming that according to the UN, the number of refugees in the southern part of the enclave has reached about 1 million people. I have not found that report initially when I finished the research a couple of hours ago. So it might be true, it might not be true, but if it was true, it would be truly significant, because the initial claims were that the area where Israel asked them to evacuate had a population of 1.1 million. That would mean that 90% of those have left, which is very bad news for Hamas, but very good news for both the civilians as well as the Israelis. For the civilians, obviously, because they will be outside the line of fire, and for Israel, that their rules of engagement can be loosened to a certain degree. If they get fired onto from a building, they can level the building instead of worrying that this might be 2 fighters but 50 civilians inside of the building. If the majority of the civilians has left, it obviously helps the Israelis a lot, even though 1 million would still mean 100,000 is still in place. So yeah, far from perfect either, but at least it would be good news for the million of people, for these million inhabitants of Gaza, that they have reached safety as of now, if that message is true, obviously, which I can't fully confirm yet. Iran is not only redeploying forces towards the northern border of Israel, both on the Golan Heights as well as in Lebanon. They are also warning Israel that should Israel continue its fighting, especially if they do a ground invasion, they will have to intervene. This is now being confirmed that Iran is officially warning Israel, but we need to understand that intervene can mean a lot. By redeploying proxies, their intervention might just be unleashing a hail of rockets. That might just be in a lower level. That might be that Hezbollah is going to try to empty their full arsenals of at least 150,000 rockets. Or it might theoretically even mean that the regular Iranian armed forces would join by, for instance, starting missile fire from Iran itself onto Israel. This seems the least likeliest version, but Iran is basically trying to create a kind of scenario that inhibits Israel to do whatever it wants by creating a certain threat level of their own intervention. Whether or not this is going to work is obviously highly questionable, as Israel has a certain goal and is intending to achieve that, and that is the destruction of Hamas's power inside of the Gaza Strip and probably killing as many Hamas fighters as they probably can. From Israel itself, we have some more news. The Mossad, the IDF chief of staff, the defense minister, the foreign affairs ministry, the National Security Council, and Shin Bet, the interior intelligence agency, are demanding and asking that the offices of Al Jazeera are getting closed down. Al Jazeera is in Qatar, is from Qatar, and Qatar is the country that financially supports Hamas, and where, for instance, Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, is residing. So it's a full supporter of Hamas, but the absurdity is where you see the pluralism in Israel, that they actually still allow journalists from that country, from a government that supports terrorists attacking them, they still allow them to be inside of Israel. Now, apparently, several high institutions have had enough. They claim that Al Jazeera is spreading lies and also basically doing espionage by publicizing where Israeli troops are gathering. This would allow Hamas to strike those places and thus endanger soldiers as well. So a lot of, for instance, intelligence agencies, military leadership, etc., are asking to close down Al Jazeera inside of Israel. As of the finishing of the research, this wasn't done yet, but there again, we'll stick to it and we'll keep watching it. If you like this report, then please hit the thumbs up button. We'll try to stay as objective here as possible, even though the audience will have no question where my sympathies lie here. I still try to stick as closely to the truth as possible. But if you enjoy this, I would really like you to come back here. So if you're new here, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so don't miss future videos, and leave a comment what you think about how long Israel will keep going and when the international pressure is going to force them to stop, because realistically that is the only thing that is going to stop Israel. Hamas doesn't have the capability, Hezbollah doesn't have the capability. Israel can more or less militarily do whatever they want against its opponents. The problem will be the international pressure on Israel. So what do you think, how long Israel will keep going? Leave a comment and discuss it. And this channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Usually these videos are now getting demonetized, so I really appreciate the support I'm receiving, especially if I show explosions. For whatever reason, this is impossible, at least for independent YouTube channels. As long as it's not a news channel, it's a problem if I show explosions and it leads to the demonetization. So I'd really appreciate your support. And that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.